This is a really special episode. It's the first ever PianoForte podcast. I'm really excited to be here with you, and I want to extend a special welcome to you if you are specifically listening to this in real time, as in right after I've published it. And thank you for joining me on this journey from the very beginning. So this is a podcast, so you're listening to it from whatever podcast host that you prefer, of course, but it's also a film on YouTube. So if you want to watch me talking, you can hop over there and watch me on the PianoForte Method YouTube channel. If I ever have an example to show, a visual example, I'll show it there, although I'll try to make it so that you're not missing anything if you're only listening. So if you have a copy of the PianoForte Method and you open it up, you will notice that the layout is really simple. It's not cluttered with too many images or information. It's a core concept and then a musical way to experience that concept, a chant or a song that the student plays on the piano. All the other musical stuff that can be introduced and presented to the student for that concept can be done so depending on what they need in the moment in that lesson. And that is what we're talking about today, a core concept, a core philosophy of my teaching, which is to meet the student where they are. A subtitle for that could be a non-prescriptive way of teaching. This idea is actually where I think we have a unique perspective as private music teachers. For example, a student comes into our studio and our entire job really is to sit there for however long, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, and watch the way they think and the way they learn. This is an interesting relationship because there probably aren't that many times in a child's life when this happens, when an adult sits and more or less watches their brain work. And so really for this reason, we have the really special opportunity to meet them exactly where they are on any given day and in any given minute of their learning journey. For example, let's imagine a student who has been taking lessons for like 6 months. This means that they've had enough time to feel comfortable in the routine of coming to lessons. They know what to expect when they walk through the door. In my studio, 6 months means they've probably performed in a studio recital, and this is always kind of a big deal. It's a bit of a rite of passage in my studio. And so this student is feeling like piano is a thing they do. Their parents, in my studio, their parents have probably paid me twice because I bill termly 3 times a year. And so this also feels regular. Like, for example, my bank details are saved on their banking app. So this really is a stage when things have stopped being new and the student and I have some type of a working relationship. I probably also, after 6 months, have a pretty clear idea on the type of learner they are. I have a reasonable idea of what to expect when they walk through my door. However, we could take 10 different students with the exact same criteria, and I would expect something different from each one when they walk into my studio. Even if we describe students who are the exact same age, each one will be completely different from the next. If I think of some of my 8-year-old students, for example, I have one that can't ever sit still. I'm sure you have one of these. They are sitting on the bench and then they put one leg on the piano bench and then it's back on the floor. And then they put the other leg on the piano bench and then back on the floor. They'll randomly stand up in the middle of playing. They'll interrupt what I'm saying to ask me totally unrelated questions like why I haven't bought new stickers yet, or why I have a lamp on the piano. You know these children. I personally have another 8-year-old who is an only child. Mom and dad both take time to practice with them. They're always prepared. They buy tickets and go to live symphony concerts. This child has a music bag with their name on it. I have another student who is the second child in a family with 4 children, all under the age of 10. Dad travels for work, so it's either mom or granny or auntie who drops them off for lessons. The student practices, but it's never a guarantee that they'll arrive with the correct books. You know what I mean. I'm sure you can think of similar students in your own studio. The point is that all of these children might be learning the exact same piece. They might be at the exact same level and the same point of learning, but they each need something different. We have, as their private music teacher, the wonderful chance to meet them where they are. I think that as teachers, this means that we approach our work with a bigger picture in mind, an idea rather of where the child is going. I had a parent ask me once if their child was doing quote unquote proper music or doing it just for fun. They asked what track of lessons they were on with me. And I took time to reassure them that I teach everyone exactly what they need to do, whatever they want to do with music, I'm teaching them that. Of course, and I did stress this with the mom, their quality and quantity of home practice determines how quickly or not they move along this path, but I am teaching the child what they need to go wherever they want to go. And this is how I approach each lesson, with a big idea, a long-term vision. And then I see where they are on a given day, and we go from there. So I often imagine that teaching is similar to a road from one place to another. We are all headed to the same place, but we might not all travel in the exact same journey. In fact, it's pretty much a given that everyone is going to take their own unique path. And there will certainly be detours. Sometimes we might literally turn around and go backwards. You know what I'm saying? It's a journey, and everyone's on their own path. Everyone's headed to the same general place. It's my job to give them like a map to help them find their way. So this might sound like I'm not very structured teaching, and I'm really quite organized. All of my students, they have a copy of the music diary, and I write in it every lesson. I ask them to keep track of their practice. But even the music diary, although we use it every week, it's really just a way for me and the student and the parents to keep track of what's happening specifically week to week. The stuff they need in each lesson, the actual teaching, that changes from the moment they walk in the door. That changes from week to week. And I just meet them where they are. This is actually what I think experienced teaching looks like. Not necessarily an elaborate way of lesson planning or a secret magic way to track practice, but I think experienced teaching is like a collection of tools we pull out of our Mary Poppins bag as we need them. For example, let's say we have a student who is struggling with, visually tracking print, like actually seeing the notes and understanding that what they're playing is what they're seeing and what they're seeing is what they're playing. So in other words, they're not making the connection between what they see and what they play. I personally probably have about 15 different tools or activities to use in this moment. So I open my bag, I pull out a tool, and we use it. If one doesn't do the trick, I use something else. And these are the types of teaching experiences and teaching knowledge that can't really be written into a plan. They're unexpected. It's an improvisation I'm doing when I'm sitting there with my student. I have to watch my student learning and then go from there. And I promise you, I have not always been this type of teacher. When I was younger, I taught differently. I'm much more experienced now. And now I tend to take lessons at a much slower pace. And I'll do an entire episode on teaching slow later on. Because I used to be a much stricter teacher and expected my students to really practice. If they didn't do this, I was frustrated, and sometimes I would even consider like firing students. And I wanted to insist that piano was a priority in their homes. I'm really not like that anymore. I think it's possibly my age, certainly my experience, 28 years now of teaching, but it's also being a parent and realizing that these kind of expectations are not realistic, nor are they really very kind. I was actually quite shocked as a music lesson parent myself, because it took a really long time. Okay, I'm just gonna say, it took 3 years of my children taking music lessons before we found a practice routine that worked in our home. And I, as a young teacher, I personally would have fired us as students. But, you know, my daughters have this genius violin teacher who told me that he meets children where they are. And he said that, my whole self just relaxed. And, you know, after a while, we got it. We found a routine that worked for us, and my children practice now and they progress really well. But I adopted this philosophy. I saw the power in this way of thinking. And when my students come in, the first thing I do is ask them how their week was, what's new, what they need from our lesson. And it's really quite a beautiful way to teach, because it kind of acknowledges the fact that music doesn't just belong to me. It's their journey, and I'm here to help them. I had a student once that only wanted to play the song My Pony. This is a song that's in PianoForte level 2, and it's a very sweet piece. It's 2 hands reading the treble clef, and it's 8 bars. And when I say it's the only thing she wanted to play, I really mean it. It's literally the only thing she wanted to play. Every lesson, she would ask if we could play it together. And I would oblige. And then she would insist we play it over and over, like 10 times. She would, I think, have happily played it for the whole entire half hour of her lesson. And this went on for like months. We played it together at the winter recital. I kind of thought that'll be it. You know, usually after a recital, a student chooses new music. But this child, no, this child came back as soon as we resumed lessons, and she wanted to play My Pony again, over and over. She just continued to ask that we play it. And I just let it happen. Became our warm-up to play My Pony together. Sometimes I would add some variations, like we would sing along with the words, or she'd play it an octave higher or lower, or sometimes I wouldn't play the accompaniment, but I'd maybe play a drum with it. The piece is only 8 bars, so even if we played it over and over, it didn't take that long. And when it was sort of out of her system, we could move on and work on some new things. But after a few months, her mother randomly called me because she thought I needed to know that there was some upheaval and stress in this child's life. Her parents were going through divorce, which I didn't know. She was being really bullied at school, which I didn't know. And she had just been diagnosed with severe dyslexia, which I didn't know but wasn't surprised. You know, there are these moments in teaching when our hearts are just super duper squeezed. And this was one of those, because I loved this family. And I realized when her mom called me that all those months we had spent playing My Pony together over and over had been an anchor for her. It was something she could do well. It was joy. It was consistent. It was a safe place. And we had fun doing it. I liked the song, and she was really proud of it, and she played it really well. On top of that, she could read it. And every time we played it together, and I insisted that she read the notes and that we read the words while we sang it, it was helping her mind understand the visual connection between the print and the sound, and it was helping with her dyslexia. it was helping her with something that she otherwise found really challenging. This is what we're doing when a student sits on our bench. We are helping them find music so that their lives are enriched. They can take it with them. They can use it in their moments of challenge, because these little students are not robots. Things vary for each of them from second to second, and it's really important that we meet them where they are. So I love a method series that's open. I love a method series that's just a core concept, and then I have the freedom to help each student blossom from there based on what they need. And I can do this in a million different ways. And one of the things I love developing as a teacher is just adding more tools and more tricks to my Mary Poppins bag of teaching ideas for everything that my student might present. It's also one of the things I think is so wonderful about teaching, that everything is new and surprising for me as well. And in the end, there isn't a proper quote unquote way to do music. And okay, I'm just gonna be a little bit cheesy and just say Emerson's quote, "Life is a journey, not a destination." And if we improvise on that a bit as music teachers, we can say that music is the journey. So I want to thank you for listening to episode 1 of the PianoForte podcast. If you would like to connect more with me and the PianoForte method, you can find all the connection details, newsletter, social links, YouTube, on the website, pianofortemethod.com. Thank you so much for joining me on my very first ever podcast. Happy music making, and see you next time.